You know, if you really want to get to the heart of Western philosophy, politics, and even theology, you've got to grapple with one towering figure, St. Augustine. We're talking about a guy living way back from 354 to 430 AD, who basically built a philosophical bridge connecting the ancient world of Plato with the brand new Christian faith. And let me tell you, that synthesis would define the next 1,500 years of thought. This quote right here, this is the key. This is our starting point. It's from his famous book, Confessions, and it's so much more than just a prayer. It's the code that unlocks his entire way of thinking. Augustine's own restless, searching journey for truth is the very blueprint for understanding his biggest, most powerful ideas.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to follow that restless mind of his. Then, we'll dive into his epic theory of history, this tale of two cities. After that, we'll see how he found clues to God in beauty itself, and how he taught us to read the entire world like a book of science. And finally, we'll look at the massive shadow he still casts over our world today.
See, to really get Augustine, you can't just skip to the end. You have to follow the path he walked. And it was a winding road, let me tell you. It took him from being this brilliant student in North Africa, through all these different philosophies, to eventually becoming one of the most important figures in the entire history of the Church.
Just look at this journey. This guy was an intellectual wanderer. He wasn't born a saint. He starts out in Carthage, dives headfirst into Manichaeanism, this wild, dualistic religion of cosmic light versus dark. But then he gets fed up with it, moves to the heart of the empire, Rome and Milan, and becomes a skeptic, basically doubting everything. It was only after all that intellectual wrestling that he finally converted. And that struggle, it shaped every single thing he wrote.
And here's what's absolutely crucial. Augustine never ditched reason. Not at all. He was a huge fan of Plato, so he saw reason as this incredibly powerful tool. But for him, reason's job wasn't to go out and find the truth all on its own. Nope. Its purpose was to help us get a clearer picture of the truths we already hold through faith. For Augustine, faith comes first, and reason is the flashlight that illuminates the path.
Okay, so this brings us to his absolute masterpiece, City of God. Now, this book wasn't just some abstract philosophical project. It was his answer to a massive crisis, the shocking sack of Rome in 410 AD. The pagans were freaking out, blaming Christians, saying, "You abandoned the old gods, and now look what happened." Augustine's response was to completely reframe, well, all of human history.
His big idea was this. All of history is basically a struggle between two invisible communities. And they aren't defined by borders or empires, but by what they love. You've got the earthly city, which is all about self-love, pride, and wanting to be totally self-sufficient. And then you have the heavenly city, which is founded on the love of God and the need for his grace. And for Augustine, these two cities are all mixed up together in our world, but they're headed for very, very different final destinations.
So why are we in this messy situation in the first place? Well, for Augustine, the answer is original sin. But he saw it as more than just some ancient mistake. He saw it as a kind of ongoing sickness of the soul, and it's rooted in one thing, pride. It's that desire to see ourselves as our own light, to think we don't need anyone or anything else. That, he said, is what plants us firmly in the earthly city and what makes God's grace so absolutely necessary.
But Augustine didn't just think about sin and history. He also had this incredibly deep sense of beauty. But he had a puzzle to solve. How can you be a good Christian, focused on the spiritual, but still love beautiful things here on earth? His solution was brilliant. He took ideas from classical philosophers and gave them a Christian spin, creating this whole new way of looking at beauty.
Here's how he broke it down. For Augustine, beauty wasn't just some surface-level thing. It was all about order and harmony. Something is beautiful when it feels complete, when all its different parts fit together just right in the right proportion. And why do we love that? Why does it feel so good? Because, he argued, that unity and diversity is like a faint echo, a small imitation of the perfect ultimate oneness of God himself.
I absolutely love this phrase. The entire universe is God's poem. What that means is that every beautiful thing you see, a sunset, a painting, you name it, isn't just a thing to look at. It's a verse in a much bigger poem. It's a signpost whose harmony and beauty are pointing you back to its author, back to God. And this idea of signposts, it leads us to one of his most mind-blowing concepts, which he lays out in his book on Christian doctrine. He basically gives us a whole new way to experience reality, turning the world from a collection of stuff into something that has to be read.
Okay, pay close attention, because this is the heart of it right here. Augustine makes this huge distinction. A thing is just a thing.
But a sign is special. A sign is a thing that points to something else. Like smoke is a thing, but it's also a sign of fire. A word is just ink on a page, but it's a sign that points to an idea. Augustine's stroke of genius was to say, what if everything is a sign? So, what's the whole point of this? It's all about loving things in the right order. For Augustine, only God is the final destination, the thing you're supposed to enjoy just for its own sake. Everything else in creation, people, nature, art, knowledge, is meant to be used. Now, not exploited, but used as a step on the ladder, a vehicle on the journey that gets us to the ultimate enjoyment of God.
And he even gives us a user's manual for how to read the world this way, starting with the Bible. Step 1, read it literally. But then, and this is the key, you test that literal meaning against the core principles of the faith. Does it lead to more love? Does it make sense? If the literal reading leads to something that's just wrong or cruel, that's your clue. It means you're not looking at a thing. You're looking at a sign that points to a deeper, more symbolic truth.
And this quote is the mic drop that ties it all together. To get stuck on the surface, to mistake the signpost for the destination it's pointing to, is a miserable slavery of the soul. It's like falling in love with the map instead of ever going on the trip. The whole goal is to use these signs to lift our minds up and beyond the physical world to something eternal.
So, what does this all add up to? I mean, where do we even begin? To put it simply, Augustine's influence is almost impossible to overstate. This guy laid the intellectual foundation for the next 1,000 years, shaping how the Western world thinks about God, humanity, sin, grace, you name it. I mean, just look at this. He's a foundational thinker for both Catholics and Protestants. The Protestant reformers like Martin Luther and John Calvin were huge Augustine fans. He's the one who really locked in the concept of original sin. He gave Christians a blueprint for how to use non-Christian knowledge, like Greek rhetoric, for their own purposes. And that idea of his, that the world is a book of signs, that dominated how everyone read and interpreted everything for the entire Middle Ages.
So we'll end with this, a question for you to take with you. Augustine taught an entire civilization how to read reality in a new way, to see the world not as a collection of random things, but as a library full of symbols. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we tried to look at our own modern, complex, and often chaotic world through his eyes, what signs would we see, and where would they be pointing?